Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Letty and this is Bugs Books, where we talk about all things reading, specifically and mainly Christian fiction, but a little bit of clean fiction as well, a little. And today we are doing my January 2025 reading wrap-up. I read 8 books in January, which is really good for me. 8 books is usually around the most that I will typically read in a month. With my reading speed, that's about, there has been a few times where I've gotten more than that, but on average that's a top reading month for me. It's about 8 books. So January was really good for reading. And without further ado, let's go ahead and jump in. The first book that I finished in January was Until We Find Home by Cathy Gohlke. I actually started this one in December around Christmas time, but I just ended up finishing it in January. It was really good. I gave it 5 stars. It follows a girl named Clara. She is American, but she's living in France at the start of World War I, and she's working with the French resistance. And she helps smuggle some Jewish kids onto British soil, but then she is unable to get back to France and has to stay on British soil. So she shows up at her aunt's house. She has never met her aunt before because her aunt and her mother are estranged. So she kind of shows up unannounced to this aunt she's never met before with 5 Jewish kids in tow. The aunt takes them in, and then they end up, because they live in the country, during England during World War II had country homes house children, so they end up taking 5 more children, these ones being German Jewish children. So they have 5 French Jewish children and 5 German Jewish children, plus Claire and her aunt and the household staff. Both Claire and her aunt are dealing with different forms of grief and different forms of insecurities. And on top of that, they're dealing with 10 refugee children that they're trying to raise. So it's really interesting. It's very moving. Like I said, I gave it 5 stars. I will admit that kind of for the first half of the book, I really didn't like Claire that much. She annoyed me a lot. But as I followed along with her growth, I appreciated her more. I appreciated her growth. I thought that the author did it very, very well. I appreciated the story of the aunt as well. Her name was Miranda. I appreciated her story. I loved all the anecdotes with the kids and their time. They each had kind of their own things going on, and that was really nice. So yeah, overall, I really enjoyed it, and I gave it 5 stars. Excuse me. Next was A Token of Love by Carrie, Turansky. I gave this one 4 stars. I did enjoy it. It is a dual timeline that follows... in the historical timeline in 1885, there is a widow who her young niece was put in a foundling home, and she's trying to track her down, and she hears this rumor that her niece, along with some other young girls, may have been sold into like a slavery kind of situation in brothels, and so she works with a newspaper reporter to track those kids down. And then in the present day storyline, you have a girl named Janelle, and she works for this foundling home museum, and she and a film videographer that they hire to do a documentary on the museum kind of uncover this scandalous piece of history, so to speak. So they're trying to figure out what happened in the historical timeline. It was really good. I gave it 4 stars. And something interesting that I noted about this book, I wrote it down. This is the 3rd book that I have read that was published in 2024 by Christian publishers that deals with the theme of trafficking in some way. And I know that there were other books published in 2024 that also dealt with the theme of trafficking that I didn't read, but I've heard about it through YouTube or Instagram. There were several others that I didn't even read, and I've read 3 of them. And so, yeah, I was like... this seems to be like a theme of books published in 2024, this trafficking theme. And it just got me wondering, just, for fun, why this theme emerged. Sometimes publishers, if they think a topic is kind of trending, they'll ask authors to include that topic in their book, so maybe that was going on. Maybe the publishers were like, let's kind of focus on this topic this year and ask our authors to write that, or it could be just completely coincidental. I know that in 2023 they had that what is it called? The Sound of Freedom came out in 2023, which is a movie that deals with trafficking, and I know that movie made like a really big splash in Christian circles and evangelical circles, so it could just be that the topic was on a lot of authors' minds and it's a little coincidental, or it could be that the publishers said, hey, this is going to be a trending topic, whether it's trending because of that movie or whether they just thought it would be trending this year. Either way, it seemed to be a very common theme among the books published in 2024, so I just thought that was an interesting little tidbit. Next, I read Frankly, My Dear Clara by Kristi Hunter. I love Kristi Hunter. She's one of my favorite authors. She makes me laugh. This one, though, I only gave 3.5 stars, which is another thing I'm doing this year. I'm giving point stars, or like half, quarter, 3/4. I'm going to be doing that this year, so to make things a little more precise. But I gave this one 3.5 stars. I don't know. I liked Hugh, the main guy, Hugh, a lot. I thought he was great. I didn't like Clara as much. She got on my nerves quite a bit. But I liked Hugh a lot. I liked the kind of dichotomy between them a lot. Just something about Clara and her views just kind of got on my nerves quite a bit, and so I had to give it 3.5 stars, which is still a good review. I mean, I still enjoyed it, and I'm still really looking forward to the next 2 books in this series because I loved her brother and her cousin, and I'm like, I want to hear their stories. I can't wait for them to come out. Clara was not my favorite heroine, so I only gave this one 3.5 stars, but that's still a really good review. It was a good book, and I'd still recommend it. Next, I read the first 2 books in the Prescott family romance, and I didn't read these back to back. There were a few books in between, but I'm just going to tell you about them together because they're in a series. So the first book is The Glass Cottage by Alyssa Schwarz, and then the second book is The Glass Road by Alyssa Schwarz. And like I said, these are the first 2 books in the Prescott family romance series. I heard about The Glass Cottage through Katie from Paperbacks and Ponytails, and it looked really interesting, so I picked it up. I thought it was just a standalone when I picked it up, and then when I actually arrived, I was looking at it and I realized it's a series, so I was like, ugh, that means I'm gonna have to, if I really like it, I'll have to buy the whole series, because it is an indie author, and it's not offered through my library, so I did pick this one up on Pango for a few dollars. The other ones I have not found secondhand, so when I'm ready to read them, I'm going to have to get them full price, which is not in my budget right now. So I will not be finishing the series right now, but I do plan on finishing the series because I really enjoyed it. It just might be a few months until I have the budget for a full price book. But yes, The Glass Cottage, I gave 5 stars. It follows, this is actually a dual timeline as well. It follows Abigail Prescott in the present day. She loses her job. She is a historian, and she loses her job, and so she moves back to her hometown temporarily to help her great aunt restore her antique shop, the Glass Cottage. And there she ends up working with her childhood best friend. They've kind of lost touch since they went off to separate colleges, but they were really, really close as children, and so they start working together, and a little bit of spark comes up, and then they find in the attic of the antique shop this journal from the 1800s with a girl named Iris, and they start piecing out, mainly Abigail starts piecing out her story because she's really interested in it. And then we have the historical timeline, which is Iris's story. I thought this one was really well done, especially because a lot of dual timeline stories, you'll notice the layout, they kind of go chapter by chapter, like chapter historical, chapter present day, chapter historical, chapter present day, and so on. But this one, it really, the historical timeline didn't have as many chapters because it really, it focused on Abigail piecing this story together. And so like when she hit a kind of stumbling block in her discovery of Iris, like it went a few chapters before it gave more of Iris' story, because Abigail had, you know, time before she could find out more of the story. And I thought that was an interesting way to do it. I really appreciated that, just kind of change up of the layout, which I felt fit this story. I also felt the kind of twist on Iris' story was really interesting. It kept me on my toes a little bit. So yeah, I gave this book 5 stars. And then in the second book in the series, The Glass Road, this follows Abigail's cousin. Her name is Tess, and she is a professional athlete. She does triathlons, and she's gearing up for the Olympic qualifiers when she has an accident at her first race of the season, and breaks her, I don't know if it's her leg or her ankle, but she breaks something, and ends up having to forego the rest of her race season and go through months of rehab. And since she can't compete, she volunteers at a camp with her brother's friend, Austin, who owns the camp. This one is not dual timeline, it's only present day. I gave this one 4 stars. I liked the story. I really liked both characters, and I really enjoyed the story. The main reason I gave it 4 stars is because of the summer camp itself. So, and this is just a really personal annoyance for me. Like, the book itself was excellent. It was really good. I really enjoyed the characters. I really enjoyed the side characters. Like, I loved the book, but I just felt like the depiction of the summer camp itself was not accurate. I grew up going to summer camps. Not only that, I grew up working at summer camps as a teenager myself, and also all of my siblings worked at summer camp, and my brother was actually in leadership at a summer camp. You know, he started out kind of down low, and he worked at summer camps for like 10 or 12 years in a row. He worked at summer camp. So by the end, he was one of the leaders of the summer camp that he worked at. And so I have kind of an inside look at summer camps. And I don't know if the way these people ran their summer camp is actually real for some summer camps, but it really worried me, because first of all, they only had 7 staff members, and they had like 8 cabins, and if your cabins are full at like 12 apiece, you need more than 7 staff members. Second of all, 3 of those staff members were adults. Actually, no, they had 8 staff members, because he had his 14-year-old nephew there. Although 14-year-old, not exactly old enough to work at a summer camp, but we'll let it slide. So if we include the 14-year-old nephew, we have 8 staff members. But 3 adult staff and 5 teenagers, and that's fine. Summer camps employ teenagers all the time. But the 5 teenagers were volunteers. They had like 1 day of CPR training, which is, I doubt they were even certified, honestly. Like, it just felt like kind of a layperson training. And that was another thing, is like, Austin taught them CPR, and he was a paramedic, so he does know how to do it. But my question was, is he instructor certified, or is he just certified? Because there is a difference. Second of all, they had a lake and lake activities, but they had no certified lifeguards. Like, they just had a bunch of volunteer teenagers. And I was like, you letting kids out on the lake with no certified lifeguards? Second of all, and this was my big issue, is that all of the staff stayed in the main lodge. They had no counselors in the cabin. And at first, he said something about it being a family camp. So I was like, oh, okay, the parents are there. But then later on, when kids started arriving, their parents would like drop them off and leave them. And like one group that came in this camp was 2nd graders. 2nd graders. He had 30 2nd graders with no parents. So the parents just dropped them off, and they stayed in the cabins without counselors. Like, all the staff were staying in the main lodge. And I was like, you're really putting all those 30 2nd graders in cabins without adult supervision overnight? Talk about an insurance hazard. Like, do you know how to run a summer camp? So I had to give this 4 stars, mainly because, and I don't know, maybe some summer camps are run like this. The summer camp I worked at and that my family has worked at was definitely not run like this. Yeah, I don't know. I just felt like there were a lot of insurance issues going on at this summer camp, and a lot of safety hazards, and it really annoyed me. So I took a whole star off for that. But the story itself was really good. I really enjoyed the story. It was just my own personal tick that I was like, this is an insurance issue. This is an insurance issue. Anyway, I would still definitely recommend the book. I'm still going to finish this series. I just don't have the budget to purchase the rest of the series right now, but I will finish it. Anyway, moving on. The next book that I read was The Golden Road by Ellen Montgomery. This is my first classic of the year. That's one of my reading goals, is to read 6 classics. This book I picked up last June at the Anne of Green Gables Museum at Park Corner in Prince Edward Island. It's got a pretty little stamp. It is the second book in the Story Girl series. I haven't actually read the first book. I haven't read The Story Girl, but I picked this one up because it's so pretty, and I enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. It follows the King children and the Story Girl and a couple of their friends as they kind of spend a final year together of childhood before they kind of start growing up and going their separate ways. I liked it, but I found it a bit more, how do I say, episodic than some of Ellen Montgomery's other books. Like, for example, her Anne of Green Gables series. Anne of Green Gables is very episodic. It covers a lot of incidents that happen in Anne's young life, but it also has an overarching track of her kind of growing up. Whereas this one, technically, yes, it does have the track of it being kind of the last summer before they go their separate ways, and at the end of the novel, they kind of, a couple of the older ones do, you know, branch off, but I still didn't feel like that was enough for it to really be tied together. Mainly, I just felt like it was very, very episodic and more of kind of a compilation of incidents that happened than it was an overarching novel. So I gave it 4 stars because I really enjoyed it, but I kind of wish it had a little more of a track that it followed. I also only gave it 4 stars because they had, like, one of their neighbors, they, like, considered her a witch. And, I mean, other Ellen Montgomery books, like, has a little bit of, like, oh, that's a witch, or oh, that's haunted, but it's always, like, disproven, you know? Like, it's always just made very clear that this is just a childhood fear, like Anne with her haunted wood. It's just a childhood fear. It's just stories that they make up, and it's very clear that it's not true. With this character, Montgomery never really makes it clear that she's not a witch. Like, in fact, she does things in the book to kind of cement the children's belief that this girl is a witch. Like, this lady makes some predictions that end up coming true. So I was like, I don't like that because I don't do witchcraft, and, like, this lady's not a witch. But I did not like that Ellen Montgomery didn't expressly make it clear to the children that she was not a witch, and that, in fact, Ellen Montgomery kind of went the opposite way and had her predictions come true so that these children thought that she was, and I was like, I don't like that. So, yeah, that took a star off for me as well. But that was The Golden Road by Ellen Montgomery. And then next I read Pixels and Paint, again by Kristi Hunter. This is her first, like, contemporary novel, and it follows a, I forget her name, but a girl who is in, like, the tech world. Like, she's a coder, and she hates art because her family is really artistic, and it just kind of makes her feel like an outsider, and so she hates art. But then she kind of starts seeing an artist. His name is Carter. I don't remember his name. And so they kind of, like, butt heads and open each other's eyes a little bit to their specific worlds, and I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. I am not a techie person, so, you know, like, the coding part of it, I was just kind of like, yeah, that's cool for her, not really for me. But I enjoyed their relationship. I enjoyed that they had to kind of see things through each other's eyes a little bit, and I enjoyed the story, so I gave it 4 stars. I think that's 7. So the last one would be When Stars Light the Sky by Elizabeth Camden. This one I also gave 4 stars. I thought it was really good. It is the second book in the Women of Midtown series. The first book, I read the back synopsis in, and I just wasn't interested in it, so I haven't read it, because it just, I don't know, it didn't look that interesting to me. But this book came out this month, and the back cover really did look interesting to me, so I went ahead and picked it up. And I don't think that it's really super necessary to read this series in order. They follow the series follows different women who kind of live in the same boarding house. So the girl from the first book was mentioned in this book as a friend of the main character, and of course she is married in this book, whereas, you know, she wasn't in the first book because she had her love story in the first book. So, I mean, yes, her story is referenced, but but it's not necessarily important to the plot. So I had no problem reading this book without reading the first one. This book follows a girl named Inga. She lives in New York, and she is a telegraph operator. And she has this rich couple. They're kind of like her godparents, and the guy becomes the ambassador to Germany right before World War I. We are in it is World War I, right? Yes, World War I. Sorry, I had a little brain blip there. But yes, it is World War I. And so he asks her to come along and be his secretary in Berlin, and she goes, and there she kind of butts heads with one of the ambassador aides that's working there. I forget his name. Benedict. His name is Benedict. And then she was a German immigrant as a child, and she doesn't have her American citizenship. So as kind of tensions are rising between America and Germany, they get kind of worried that she won't be able to go back to America when the ambassador and the embassy packs up and leaves. And so she ends up in this marriage of convenience with Benedict so that she can be under his citizenship and his protection, and that she'll be able to leave the country when it's time. And I enjoyed this book. I gave it 4 stars. Sorry, got distracted. I gave it 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. I felt like they both had really good growth. And yeah, it was just really good. I thought, so the author, she read I think it's the autobiography of the ambassador to Germany leading up to World War I, and that's where she kind of based her research for this book. And so I felt like it was a really interesting glimpse into the crumbling relationships between America and Germany in World War I, and how America, you know, tried their best to stay out of the war at first. Because when we look back at that history, we're like, oh yeah, nobody wanted to be in the war, but then the Lusitania sank, and then everybody wanted to be in the war, but the president kept us out for like another, however long, I think it was like almost another year, until we finally intercepted that telegram that was going to Mexico. And then we joined the war. And you know, it can be kind of a confusing history to look back at, because so much of America didn't want to be in war until the Lusitania sank, and then they did want to be in war, and then they were mad at the president for keeping them out of war after they wanted to be in war. And it was a very volatile time in American history. And so to have that research that she did on the American ambassador to Germany at the time, and to kind of get, even if it's fictionalized, to get a glimpse at this fictionalized account of how we were keeping those ties to Germany and how we were trying to kind of thread that needle of diplomacy, I just really enjoyed it. I found it really, really good. Okay, so before I end, I do have to say, I said that I gave The Glass Road 4 stars. I actually gave it 4.25 stars. So yeah, I just wanted to clarify that. Sorry, text message. Yes. So thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope I will see you in the next video.